Joining us for more on today's record-breaking market action is Tampa Bay Lightning Chairman and Governor Jeff Vinik. And of course, before purchasing the NHL team, Jeff was CEO of Vinik Asset Management. He was also the former manager of Fidelity Investments' flagship Magellan Fund, which had an average annual return of 18% and $55 billion in assets under management. Jeff, great to see you.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you to put on your hat from your previous life for a moment here and give us your thoughts on this environment after the election. We seem to be in a situation where investors are giving the incoming president all the benefit of the doubt and pricing in all kinds of good things for the economy. What do you think of what we're seeing right now?
Well, I'm happy to be here on a day where all the indices are hitting new highs. That's pretty exciting. But I think one of the things going into the election, there was a great deal of uncertainty, a good deal of pessimism going in. I think there would have been a rally, frankly, no matter which candidate had won, as the uncertainty gets lifted. And clearly, there's been, it's interesting because obviously it wasn't expected that President-elect Trump was going to win. So you've had a major dislocation in the market. In fact, in the days following the election, it seemed like half the stocks were up 20, 30%, half the stocks were down. Really a very interesting time. I think big picture, we have decent economic growth. We have low inflation. Yeah, it may pick up a little bit, but it seems like a good backdrop for stocks and a good backdrop for the economy.
Just from a pure business perspective, putting aside the market for a moment, if one looks at Trump's rhetoric during the campaign and what we found afterwards, there's stuff that one probably liked from a business perspective: lower taxes, regulatory rollback, more spending on infrastructure. There are also things in there that most business people probably wouldn't like, such as some of his talk about trade, immigration, both unskilled and skilled immigration. That being said, mostly people seem to be focusing on the good so far, and ignoring like the fact that we still might get sort of a more populist attitude on trade and some other things. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think big picture-wise, if you look at Trump's economic policies or what he's going to try to put into place, it's pro-growth. And yeah, there are positives, negatives, as you talked about some of the components. But clearly, we're looking at an environment coming up that probably should lead to somewhat faster economic growth, good for profits, good for wages, good for jobs. Seems like a pretty good environment.
And of course, one of the things that he's been touting is the infrastructure spending. He kind of envisions it, or a lot of people speculate that what he has in mind is a private-public partnership. There are pitfalls associated with that. What do you think we need to watch out for as investors come to terms with what's ahead and how businesses position themselves as well?
Yeah, I mean, you talk about public-private partnerships and infrastructure. That's on our minds a lot in Florida and in the Tampa Bay area. We are hoping to make some big investments in infrastructure in the years ahead, and I could see perhaps it comes from some spending, government spending that's thrown off from an infrastructure bill. Perhaps it's a public-private partnership, et cetera. But I think overall we're going to be in a reasonably good environment where businesses can have confidence to make investments.
How do you see the labor situation? Because one argument against the idea of a big infrastructure boom is that the labor market's gotten tighter. If you look at surveys of businesses, more and more they say they have difficulty hiring workers as it is. You imagine that if there were some big new projects, that would be a further strain on the labor market. From your perspective, how much spare capacity is there in the labor market?
You know, there's some, but there's not a huge amount, but I think that's only part of the picture. I do think we are in the beginning stages of labor inflation, of wage inflation, due to tightness in various areas. I think it'll be gradual as some people come back into the labor force. But contrary to other people, I think it's going to move very slowly into consumer prices overall. So you could have a long period of time where actually the average worker is doing a little bit better. And, you know, after years of real wages going down for the average worker, they could see some benefit over the next several years. I'm hoping that we're in a better trend there.
And you and Bill Gates' Cascade Fund are investing a lot in Tampa Bay, Florida. That's your new project. That's your passion. Part of this is to develop the city into an economic success story, encourage entrepreneurship. One thing you've pointed out, though, as a weakness for Tampa Bay is wages and perhaps the labor market there. Talk to us about what you're doing to get Tampa Bay up to speed.
Yeah, if you look at, I've been in the Tampa Bay area now for 6-7 years since buying the Tampa Bay Lightning. It's actually a great opportunity. The economy is doing extremely well there. Job growth is right now over 3.5%. Population's increasing 2%. You actually have nominal economic growth there between 5 and 7% right now, so it's a very strong area. One of the reasons I bought the team, one of the reasons, along with Bill Gates and Cascade Investment, we're doing a $3 billion mixed-use development, is because we see this. The whole Tampa Bay-Orlando corridor is one of the best areas for growth over the next 10 to 20 years.
Why is that? I mean, I was thinking, I remember during the crisis, and a lot of people were saying, oh, Florida's toast, but it's like people are just going to keep moving to Florida forever.
Well, people are moving to Florida, businesses are moving to Florida, and importantly, after decades of depending on housing, the Florida economy is diversifying. As was just discussed, we in Tampa Bay are going to be putting a great emphasis on higher wages jobs, on creating an innovation ecosystem, entrepreneurialism, to bring young companies to Tampa, to keep the best and the brightest.
Specifically, what areas outside of real estate are you seeing the most growth?
Business services, and the Tampa Bay area has led the Florida in growth and job growth 3 of the last 6 years, led by business services and professional services. I think if we look at areas for innovation, what comes to mind in our region is financial services, life sciences, tourism, and perhaps sports.
What about the demographics? You have proximity to Latin America, but you also have an older population, an older community, and it's kind of a microcosm of a lot of what the U.S. is looking at right now. How do you reconcile that with some of the protectionist talk that we're getting from President-elect Donald Trump?
Yeah, Latin America is close. It's especially, obviously, for Miami and Florida. It's a major area of focus. Again, the Tampa Bay area economy is very diversified. Trade with Latin America is a small part of it. There are areas that'll benefit. There are probably some areas that'll get hurt a little bit. But I do want to say one thing. Actually, contrary to most people's belief, Tampa, Florida, the average age, the median age there is actually less than the national average.
Oh,
it's only
really?
37 years old. Tampa, Florida is, I believe, going to become a business hub of the whole southeast United States.
It's all those hockey players. All right, Jeff Vinik, you're sticking with us. We're going to talk about the financial turnaround of Jeff Vinik's Tampa Bay Lightning and what that means to the NHL. This is Bloomberg. What'd you miss? The Tampa Bay Lightning Hockey Club are skating on a path towards profitability. The team was on the brink of insolvency when Jeff Vinik bought it back in 2010. Jeff Vinik is here with us today in New York. So when you bought in 2010, they were financially troubled. You had said that the team is almost out of the red, on the verge or roughly break even. Yes. Give us an update now. Where does it stand?
Yeah, we are roughly break even.
Roughly break even. Can you give us a more specific sense of when you'll get to a meaningful profit?
I think that's a pretty good sense. When I bought the team, which again, as you know, was 6-7 years ago, our goal was to be world-class on and off the ice, but I had 3 main objectives that were related to that. One was to be one of the best teams in hockey year in and year out, and I think we're achieving that. 2 was to have a big impact on the community and be able to inspire others and be good leaders in the community. We think we're doing a good job with that. And 3 was to get to roughly break even financially, and we're achieving that, so we're very happy where we're at right now.
So you're a Sunbelt hockey success story. Sunbelt hockey teams have not necessarily all done well. I think of the Coyotes, for instance. What are you doing differently?
I think, frankly, the National Hockey League's in a great spot right now, and many of the teams are thriving throughout. We went there, and I was very fortunate. First thing I did after we tried to be world-class, or said we were going to be world-class, I was able to hire Todd Leiweke as CEO of the Lightning. I was able to hire Steve Yzerman as general manager of the Lightning. And third of all, with those guys there, I didn't meddle in their business. I just brought two people who are some of the best in the business of sports. Let them do their craft, hold them accountable, give them resources, hold them accountable. But I didn't meddle too much, and I think that's part of the formula here for having success.
Talent. Basically talent. Okay. So speaking of talent, one thing that everyone's up in arms over is whether the NHL will allow its players to play in the Olympics the next go-round. Where do you stand on that? Because it feels like that's taking center stage and maybe proving to be a bit of a distraction.
Yeah, the Olympics are obviously a great event. Hockey's been the hallmark. If you look at the Winter Olympics over the last several cycles, hockey has been the #1 event there. Our players like going there. The owners have mixed feelings, to be perfectly honest. But for us to go to the Olympics, we have to be taken care of properly, and I think that's something that I'll leave up to the commissioner. He'll do a great job with that.
Can you be more specific with being taken care of properly?
Well, there are insurance payments that are need to guarantee player contracts, things like that, and we have to make sure that we feel confident if we were to go to the Olympics, if we think it's the right decision, that we're not losing money while that's going on. That wouldn't make a lot of sense. We are donating our assets, taking the risk of injury. We should be compensated in return.
Some people would argue that that was the case with the World Cup of Hockey as well in September, that you were taking the risk of injury too. That went off without a hitch, and it was a fantastic tournament. I wonder to what extent that removes the need to have to go to the Olympics. Do you see a connection there?
Well, you know, they're both great events. The World Cup of Hockey, it was very exciting. The U.S. Canada under-23 team was very exciting. The quality of hockey was very exciting. It was great to get our fans involved 2-3 weeks earlier in the year. So, you know, in terms of a showcase for the sport, both the World Cup of Hockey, the Olympics, both are great demonstrations of our talent and the quality of our athletes.
So I was in Vegas this past weekend. Full disclosure, my husband put some money down on the Rangers, which have 8-1 odds to go all the way in June. But we also looked at how Vegas bookies have your Lightning at 5-1.
Wow.
What do you think of those odds?
Well, I hope we're 1-1. I hope we win the whole thing. That's what I'm looking forward to. You know what's amazing about hockey, though, which is one of the reasons why it's the greatest sport, is that it's so competitive. It's so even across all the teams. In other sports, you know, some teams are really dominant and have a high probability of winning. In the NHL right now, I could give you 10 teams, each who has a legitimate shot of winning the Stanley Cup. I would say the Rangers are one, and I like to think the Lightning are another.
Well, the Vegas bookies certainly think so. But speaking of Vegas, do you have any concerns about the expansion of the NHL to Las Vegas with gambling? Because people wonder if that will infiltrate the game or at least meddle in the game in some way.
No, I don't worry about that at all. I think Las Vegas is going to be a great market for the NHL. I think the team's going to be very successful, strong ownership, strong demographics, etc. Great, we'll have great fan support there, so I think it's going to be very successful there. We can keep the gambling separate. It's not going to get involved with our game.
All right, Jeff Vinik, Chairman and Governor of the NHL's Tampa Bay Lightning. Thank you so much.
Very welcome.